Hello, PFFL players. Welcome to the weekly Stardom Situm Show. I'm your host, Josh Martin, and on this show, I'm going to tell you about a quarterback who had a bad couple of weeks, but should still be in your starting lineup. I'll give you a running back that I think everyone's really high on that I'm not that high on. Plus, I'm going to tell you about a wide receiver that needs to be in your lineup, even though he scored less than 5 points last week. But first, I want to start out at quarterback, and I want to talk to you guys about a guy who I had number 1 overall coming into this year. That's Aaron Rodgers. I had a lot of people on Twitter talking to me this week. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter at JoshMartin33. Send me any questions that you want. I'll answer all of your individual Stardom Situm questions or just general questions about your team. I had a lot of guys tweet me this week asking about Aaron Rodgers. Should I trade him? Should I bench him? What should I do with him? Here's what I'm telling you to do. Do not panic about Aaron Rodgers. First week he played San Francisco. Second week he played Chicago. Third week he played Seattle. All 3 defenses are in the top 15 against quarterbacks for fantasy points. Do not panic. He's got New Orleans this week. He's obviously in your lineup. Do not trade him. If you get something stupid for a trade offer like Ray Rice and Calvin Johnson for Aaron Rodgers, sure, you should consider it. Other than that, do not consider trading Aaron Rodgers. You need him. He's going to be in your lineup every week except for week 10, and that's only because Green Bay has a bye. Let's jump right into it. I know you're curious. I'm curious. Who are you going to start? Who are you going to sit? All right, I'm not curious. I already know. Just like to leave a little intrigue in the show. It's fun every once in a while. Quarterback position. Let's start with a guy who had a bad couple of weeks, and that's Peyton Manning. He ended up with some junk time last week, so he got you some good points. This week, I have him ranked at number 5 among quarterbacks. He needs to be in your lineup. He's playing Oakland, who is giving up an average of 21.5 points against the quarterback. That's the 5th most. Peyton Manning's going to have a good week. I've been down on him for the last couple of weeks, but I'm starting to buy in. This is the week where you start him. I think Peyton Manning has become a matchup-based start. There's other guys you might have drafted behind him that you should be starting over him in some weeks. Not this week. Put Peyton Manning in your lineup. First guy I want to tell you to sit, Michael Vick. I dropped him all the way down to 13th in my rankings because of the Giants' pass rush. By the way, my rankings are going to be up on PFFL.com this week, so you will be able to look at them all weekend. If you're wondering who you should start over some guys and sit under some guys, look at the rankings. They'll tell you based on the number. Michael Vick, I got at 13, behind guys like Andy Dalton, Eli Manning, Robert Griffin III, Matt Schaub. The Giants' pass rush is still the best pass rush in the league. They're going to get to Vic. They're going to get to him often. The other guy I want you to sit this week, Tony Romo, going up against Chicago on Monday night. Chicago is the number 1 defense against quarterbacks for fantasy. They're giving up in the first 3 weeks an average of 7.6 points per game. Romo is going to have a tough time against that team. Put him on your bench. Play a guy like Ryan Fitzpatrick or even Josh Freeman going up against Washington instead of Romo. Another guy maybe you play over Tony Romo, Christian Ponder, going up against Detroit. Detroit gives up the 10th most points to quarterbacks. If you're looking for a guy because you want to sit Michael Vick or Tony Romo, play Christian Ponder. He's going to get you points this week. That's what matters. You need points. You need continuous points. If you're in Tier 3, you need to start moving up to Tier 2. Week 4 is the time. Start making a move. There's not that many weeks left. Think about it. 10 weeks, 11 weeks left of the playoffs. You need to start putting yourself in a position where you can move up a tier to Tier 2. If you're in Tier 2, you want to be there next year? No, you don't. You want to play with the big boys in Tier 1. This is when it starts. Tier 1, go for the gold. Stay there. Win the prize money. That's the guy. These are the guys you need to start. Let's move on to running backs. First guy, I love this matchup. I moved him up in my rankings to number 3. It's Marshawn Lynch for the Seattle Seahawks. He's playing St. Louis. They give up the 11th most points to running backs. Is that great? No, it's kind of middle of the road. But Seattle loves to run the ball. They will give Marshawn Lynch the rock a lot, and he's going to do the most with it. Remember, Detroit Lions, week 1, averaged 4.6 yards per carry against the Rams. The Rams' run defense is not good. Play Marshawn Lynch, obviously, but he's number 3 in my rankings. Play him over a guy like LaShawn McCoy, Frank Gore, Ryan Matthews. Lynch is a number 1 and might end up the number 1 back this week. Next guy I want to tell you to start, Ben Jarvis Green Ellis. I've been high on him all year. If you've listened to this show every week, you know that. If you haven't, this is your first time tuning in, hey, welcome. Thanks for listening. Guess what? I'm high on Ben Jarvis Green Ellis. He plays Jacksonville this week. Jacksonville gives up the second most points to running backs. They average 29 points per game given up to running backs. Now that's a total. So if a team has 2 running backs, they score 29 points. Ben Jarvis Green Ellis gets all the carries for Cincinnati. He's going to get in the low 20s this week. He's a number 1. Next guy on the list, Ryan Williams. I'm sure you listened last week to the Waiver Wire show. If you didn't, start. It's a good show. It's hosted by a great guy. It's me. Just saying. I told you to drop Ryan Williams. Well, then the news came out this week that the Cardinals placed Beanie Wells on injured reserve with a designation to return. He can't return until November 25th. Ryan Williams is going to get the opportunity. This is when you need to see if his talent matches his opportunity. But this week he's playing Miami. 12th most points given up. He's a start. He's going to get the carries. We'll see what he does with them this week. If he's not good, then you know we're never going to have him on this show again. I'll never talk about him again. But put him in your lineup this week. Cedric Benson. Talked about Aaron Rodgers and how Green Bay might go off against New Orleans. Cedric Benson's going to be a part of that. New Orleans is the worst fantasy defense against running backs. They're giving up an average of 33.4 points per game to running backs over the first 3 weeks. Cedric Benson, put him in your lineup. Start him over a guy like DeMarco Murray, who I have 16th. Cedric Benson, I have ranked 14th. Stephen Ridley. Doug Martin is 18th. Darren Sproles is 17th. Start Cedric Benson over all those guys. First guy I want to tell you to sit is Michael Bush. Reports came out today that Matt Forte returned to practice. So I don't know if Forte is going to play. I don't know if he's not going to play. But it's not good for Michael Bush owners. He plays against Dallas, who's not great against the run. They're okay. They're middle of the road. They give up the 15th most points. So literally middle of the road. But the Matt Forte situation is only bad for Michael Bush owners. Even if he gets 7 to 8 touches, that's 7 to 8 touches that Michael Bush doesn't get. It's not worth the risk. Sit him. Next guy, Reggie Bush. Put him on your bench. Playing Arizona. Well, Arizona, not that great, right? They give up only the sixth least points against running backs. Average of 11.7. Plus, Reggie Bush is hurt. He's practicing, limited. He'll probably play, but he shouldn't be in your lineup. The guy I think everyone's high on at running back that I am not high on is Mikel LaShore, playing Minnesota. He was probably the waiver wire pickup of the week. Minnesota is the second best defense in fantasy against running backs. They are only giving up 9 points per game to teams' running backs. The Lions like to run the ball. They're going to try to establish the run. Minnesota's defense is the real thing against the run. Mikel LaShore is going to get carries, but I don't think he's going to be productive. Sit him down. Last guy I want to talk about, I have told you to put this guy on the bench every week I've done this show. I hope you've listened. I ranked 40 running backs this week. You'll see it on the PFFL.com. I ranked 40 running backs. This guy is 40th. Chris Johnson. Bench him. I'm sick of waiting for him. He plays Houston. Not a good matchup. He can't run the ball. He averages, listen to me, he averages 1.5 yards before his first contact. He's barely getting past the line of scrimmage before he's getting touched. And then he's getting tackled right away. He's not breaking tackles. He's not making anyone miss. He doesn't seem to have the same burst. I don't know what's going on, but there's something going on. You need to get him out of your lineup and probably for the rest of the year. Wait. If he has a breakout game, then maybe the next week you put him in. Till then, don't even think about it. At wide receiver, First guy I want to mention is Andre Johnson. I moved him up to number 2 in the ranking because I love the matchup this week against Tennessee. Tennessee is giving up an average of 24.4 points per game to the wide receiver. Andre Johnson, obviously in your lineup, but he's a number 1 this week. Moved him up to number 2. AJ Green at 3, Larry Fitzgerald at 4, and my surprise ranking of the week is Percy Harvin at number 5. Detroit's secondary is banged up, and Percy Harvin does really great things against Detroit. Detroit always defends the reverse poorly. Percy Harvin's going to get the ball in some crazy different ways, and he's going to do good things with it. The wide receiver I told you about at the beginning of the show, who scored less than 5 points last week, but I want him in your lineup this week, is Greg Jennings. They're limiting him in practice. I know. I saw the reports. Guess why that is? It's so he's fully ready for Sunday against New Orleans. New Orleans giving up an average of 23.7 points to wide receivers. Jennings needs to be in your lineup. I got him at number 8 this week. Rodgers is going to go off, and so is Jennings. The guy I want you to sit, Steve Smith at Atlanta. Atlanta is 5th best against wide receivers through the first 3 weeks. Look what they did to Denver last week. They shut down Peyton Manning in that passing game. They're going to do the same thing to Cam Newton. Atlanta's defense is for real. Believe in it, understand it, and know that when a guy you've got is playing Atlanta, you need to seriously consider putting him on the bench. I had Steve Smith ranked number 3 last week. I have him at 17 because of the matchup. Guys you're playing over him, Wes Welker, Demaryius Thomas, Jordy Nelson, Stevie Johnson, Torrey Smith, who played on Thursday, Eric Decker going up against Oakland. Next guy on my list who I want you to sit, Brandon Marshall. Brandon Marshall is at Dallas. Dallas's defense is much improved. They're the number 1 defense against wide receivers so far through the first 3 weeks. They're only giving up 9.6 points per game to wide receivers. Brandon Marshall's going to get a lot of attention from those cornerbacks. Put him on your bench. Next guy I want you to sit, as I look through my rankings, Marcus Colston. Yeah, Green Bay's defense struggles, right? Not that great in the secondary. They're 4th best against the wide receiver. Marcus Colston is not getting targets. He's not getting looked at. He's having a bad season so far. Put him on the bench. Another guy, Deshaun Jackson. Giants, not that great against wide receivers, but they're great against quarterbacks. Told you to sit Vic. Same thing here with Jackson. Vic is not going to have the time to throw that deep ball to Jackson that gets him his points. Jackson's production comes from those deep downfield throws that connect on 1 or 2 a game. Vic isn't going to have time to do that this week. Jackson needs to be out of your lineup in favor of guys like Denarius Moore, Malcolm Floyd going up against Kansas City, Miles Austin, Michael Crabtree at the Jets with no Darrelle Revis. I like all those guys better than Colston or Jackson this week. Dwayne Bowe at San Diego. Put them in your lineup. Bench Deshaun Jackson. If you're looking for a desperate guy, I talked about him on the waiver wire show this week, Jeremy Curley. Another guy I really like is Mike Williams. Washington is the worst defense against wide receivers. So if you're saying to yourself, well, I'll bench Deshaun Jackson, but who am I going to put in? Put in Mike Williams. He is going to get you points this week, and that's what matters. Last but not least, tight ends. The NFL has changed. It's a tight end league. This is a very important position now. The first guy I want to talk about, Kyle Rudolph. Second worst team against the tight end is the Detroit Lions. They're giving up 14 points per game to the tight end position. Kyle Rudolph is a big target. He's going to get red zone looks from Christian Ponder. He's going to score a touchdown. Mark it. I'm calling it out right now. Owen Daniels. Owen Daniels for Houston is playing Tennessee. Tennessee is the worst defense so far through 3 weeks against the tight end. They give up 19 points a game to the tight end position. Start Owen Daniels. Some guys you should sit at tight end, Jermaine Gresham. Jacksonville looks like a great matchup for Cincinnati, but they are surprisingly good against tight ends. They only give up 6 points a game to tight ends. They're going to shut down Gresham. Last guy, Brent Selleck, same thing. Pressure on Vic. Selleck might be his bailout, but I don't think you should risk it. If you've got Gresham or Selleck, start a guy like Jared Cook, Jermichael Finley, Martellus Bennett. Start guys like that over them. Brandon Myers in Oakland. I like him going up against Denver this week. So that's our show. As always, I appreciate you listening. Hoping I'm helping you out with your lineup. I want to get you Tier 3 players up to Tier 2. Tier 2, I want to get you up to Tier 1. And Tier 1, I'm looking to get you that big money. These are the guys I think can do it. Put the ones on the bench I told you to. Start the ones I told you to. You'll win this week. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter at JoshMartin33. I host a weekly show called The Sports Section. Gives you all your sports news you need to know. You can find that on iTunes. You can also follow that show on Twitter at Sports Section Pod. Don't forget to listen to all of our great content we have here on PFFL Radio Network. PFFL Breaking News Live will be with you on Saturday, giving you all the up-to-date news on injuries, depth charts, everything you need to know going into Sunday. I'm your host, Josh Martin. As always, keep smiling, keep listening, and always look both ways.